That's a nice mountain view.
Good afternoon. This is welcome again to another edition of Environmental Justice Now. My name is Faith Harris, and I am the Executive Director for Virginia Interfaith Power and Light. Before we start today, I'd like to do a brief land acknowledgement. We want to remind ourselves that we gather on the unceded land of the indigenous peoples. I'm joining in from Richmond, Virginia, and I'm on the land of the Powhatan and Chickahominy peoples. And if you are unsure of whose land you are on and you want to find out, you can go to native-land.ca to find out. Native-land.ca to find out where you are and whose land you are living on, working on, playing on. So, speaking of land acknowledgements, it's worth acknowledging that many parts of our land in Virginia are currently on fire. And this follows the driest fall in over 100 years. And the effects of climate change are here in Virginia. And it's more important than ever to fight polluting industries, especially energy industries, that have continued to pollute our air and our water, and in many ways, our lives. And that's why today we're excited to invite Sharon Fisher and Jess Mullins Fullen, who are all working together to fight proposed modular nuclear reactors in far southwest Virginia. Many of you know that Governor Glenn Youngkin announced in his energy plan for Virginia in 2002 the proposal to build SMRs, and those are small modular reactors in southwest Virginia. Our panelists are here today to discuss their concerns and to tell us a little bit more about what that means for their health and the environment, and also the economy for the Southwest. So today we have Sharon Fisher. She's president of Clinch Coalition, a community-based organization dedicated to preserving forests and wildlife in Southwest, the most far southwest part of our state, and especially around High Knob, one of the most biodiverse regions in the continental United States. And then we also have Jess Mullins Fullen, who is the lead organizer at Southern Appalachian Mountain Stewards, for short, which is SAMS, which organizes grassroots networks in Southwest Virginia to protect the environment and natural resources and to provide mutual aid to the community. So welcome, Jess and Sharon. We're excited to have you here today. And I'm going to open up and let you both make a brief statement about your organizations and tell us a little bit about yourselves before we jump right into questions.
Go ahead.
Hi, y'all. My name is Jess Mullins Fullen. I'm living here in southwestern Virginia, and I've been with Southern Appalachian Mountain Stewards for about 18 months now, but SAMS as an organization has been organizing since 2006, 2007. And we are based here in Big Stone Gap, Virginia, far southwestern side of the state, as Faith has pointed out. And we are on the unceded lands of the Cherokee, Shawnee, and Yuchi. Just want to uplift that really quick. In Big Stone Gap, the actual namesake that the indigenous folks gave it was Three Forks. So just also really important to give that name place. But SAMS is building deep democracy in our communities. We're really focused on accelerating a truly just transition and breaking into those conversations with our community members and kinfolk about what that means and what that could look like, and encouraging people to really vision for what the future of this place could mean if we truly divest from the extractive economies and like ideas around racialized capitalism that currently are pretty prolific throughout the entire United States. Sam's stewards something called the Mountain Movement Hub, which is one reason why me and Sharon are sharing space right now. The Mountain Movement Hub is an organizing concept housed within a physical space in which grassroots organizations across far Southwest and regionally can come together, share space, share ideas, share resources, and it also helps break through those notions around rural isolationism and how difficult it can be to organize in rural communities. So aside from just like physical space where we can all have offices and we can be together, we also provide resources such as printers, such as access to meeting space again, and really just a way to provide like a community-centered space in our communities that are value aligned to what the work we are doing and what we want to do together. We may all have different missions, in the particularities of the thing, but our values are aligned, and I think that's what's important about sharing this space. It'll take us all.
Yes, thank you, Jess. Sharon, you want to tell us a little bit about your organization?
Yes, and hello everyone, and thank you for inviting us to spread the word down to the rest of the state and maybe the region. The Clinch Coalition is actually celebrating its 25th anniversary this year.
Mm-hmm.
It started out completely grassroots, and we still remain that, local people, and protesting excessive logging in our national forest here. We continue to do that because they continue logging, but they at least are using what are called best management practices. But we also protect wetlands, water, and we have moved more and more into environmental justice. It's the High Knob is that area. Actually, if you can see in the background, the mountain there, but all of the surrounding communities as well. And we're moving more and more into looking at the relationship of environmental effects on the health of the people here. So I've been with Clinch Coalition for almost 5 years, and we're glad to be here in the hub. There's been different spaces, but the Clinch Coalition's never had a real physical base. And not only are we here physically, but the relationships that we're building with so many other grassroots organizations, I think it's a shot in the arm for all of us.
Yeah, that's really wonderful to hear. That's exciting to hear. And you made me think of something that was really important. And I think it's something that most people, when we hear the term environmental justice, oftentimes people immediately only think of urban spaces, right? But the reality is that rural communities are often asked to bear undue burdens of pollution and polluting industries in their communities as well. And so we don't want to forget that rural communities are experiencing environmental injustices in the same way, in many of the same ways that urban, more densely populated areas of the state are experiencing. So I'm really happy that you are focusing on that for the community members and the people that live, and the animals and vegetation and that beautiful mountain behind you. So that's really a wonderful work that you're doing. So let's jump into our topic for today. Tell us a little bit about what are small modular nuclear reactors. Do you guys know?
Yeah.
I'll let you take that, Sharon.
Okay. I tell people a year ago, none of us here ever thought we would be trying to understand nuclear energy.
Mm.
Virginia has 2 large nuclear power plants, more in your area up there. It's always been a coal mining logging area down here. First thing I want to say is small modular nuclear reactors do not exist. The Russians apparently have one floating out in the ocean. Greenpeace has called it a floating Chernobyl. We know that China, India, some other countries are looking at these as well. and our US government, but none have actually ever been built yet. Okay. So everything, then they talk about what they're promising us, they're basing it on something that doesn't exist. And just to put it in an image in everyone's minds, think of mama bear, papa bear, and baby bear. Your large nuclear power plants, which people see, you know, the tall towers and everything, those are your large nuclear power plants. And think about them producing 1,000 megawatts, okay? Just for comparison. What they're calling the small modular reactors would be about much smaller, that they would be manufactured and transported to sites, and they would produce about 300 megawatts. So that's about a third of what a large power plant. And then there are micro reactors, okay, which are about a third of what a SMR would be. And that may be what you find on nuclear submarines. So, yeah, just think of those images. So that's why they call them small modular, because they want them to be manufactured like in Lynchburg and then transported here to Southwest Virginia. That's the plan.
That's very helpful to help people and have a framework for which to think about this this topic. So, what are the most common myths about SMRs that are being perpetuated, and to try to sell them to us, right? What are the myths that we need to be thinking about and kind of debunking, I guess?
I think that there's a huge push to say that this will lead to economic revitalization, economic development, job creation, particularly because these would be manufactured off-site and then brought in. The amount of jobs that would be created that would actually be sustainable outside of just like construction on site, in terms of like preparing the site for build of a modular that's going to be brought in, they wouldn't be long-term positions. Also, the people who would be running the reactors likely wouldn't be sited in Southwestern Virginia, and it wouldn't really create that many positions for people to be like operators, because these can be operated remotely. And because of like legacy costs and issues with extraction, we don't really have the workforce here to be able to operate a nuclear facility, right? So,
yeah, one of I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, Faith. Okay. Promises, 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 and the federal government is behind this, and it's a money grab right now. We're talking millions, even billions of dollars are going into pumping up the nuclear industry. The nuclear industry is in trouble. There had not been a nuclear plant in about a quarter of a century. They just opened 2 in Georgia. They were like 7 years late and billions of dollars over cost, which has happened with every nuclear plant. South Carolina started one, they didn't finish it. Dominion Power bought it, and now they're having their ratepayers in South Carolina cover part of that cost. I mean, we could go on and on and on. Follow the money. It's just like everything else. And unfortunately, the federal government, the Department of Energy, federal and state, are really pushing this.
So, so are there any other myths? I'm appreciative of the reality that oftentimes energy producers, when they come into whether it's nuclear reactors or even power plants, are often promising jobs that actually, as Jess pointed out, are temporary, but also require levels of education and training and certification that the communities that host this infrastructure don't already have. And so that means transporting new people in to do the work for even the jobs that are created by by the industry or by the construction. That's really an important aspect of this. So thank you for pointing that out as well.
Yeah, another thing they're promising, of course, is tax revenues. Well, again, we know that community states are constantly competing for businesses. They want, emerging technology, energy companies to come in here, but they incentivize them, they give them tax breaks. And like I say, the millions of dollars that the federal and state government is putting into this, it would be nice to have a balance sheet at the end to say how much money went in and how many tax revenues actually came out.
Yeah.
I can also appreciate the arguments that say, well, nuclear is safe, nuclear is clean. Well, there is extraction needed to produce the uranium to then produce the nuclear. So that's another conversation about extraction in other communities for which we are connected. However, I also want to say that, nuclear being safe, that's one thing, but small modular reactors are a new technology. They're an experimental technology. So there is no way to say that what would be cited here potentially would be 100% safe. This is about, an experimental technology in a sacrificial zone. We know this is a sacrificial zone, and much of Central Appalachia has been a sacrificial zone for over 100 years. So I think that is something that's really important to sort of think about how those things buttress up against each other. Why here? Why now?
Another thing, excuse me, that they're talking about, which you guys up there in Richmond area and Northern Virginia will appreciate, data centers. Okay, they'll bring data centers, put them here, and maybe fuel the power source would be an SMR. Well, data centers are being built now. SMRs, if they ever even happen, are 10 years out. Okay, at a minimum, and they are admitting that. Unless someone like Senator Manchin, we know what he did with the Mountain Valley Pipeline, they want to fast track regulations now. So it's a whole basket of issues.
Yes. So the Clinch Coalition fact sheet says that hundreds of or even thousands of things would be needed to be price competitive of these things, of these small modular reactors. Can you say more about that? What does that mean?
Well, first of all, let me just say that when the governor first spoke and he talked about an SMR as though he was talking about one, but what we hear about usually it's putting several on one site. So that's the idea as well. And but to be price competitive, nuclear energy, and this is proven, is the most expensive form of say electricity generation by far more than solar or any of the others. So they talked about being price competitive. I don't know that it would ever reach that, because even to the point, there's so much billions of dollars going in trying to just get a design now that like we say, the cost overruns. Every nuclear power plant in the United States that's ever been built in the last 50 some, they started building them in the 50s, has been cost overrun. They say, well, after you get through the design stage, they'll be cheaper to produce. I don't know that in the building operation and even the energy output from SMRs could ever say be definitely compared to solar. it's a much cheaper form of energy.
I really appreciate the putting that into perspective for us, because you're right. When the governor's proposal came out, it sounded like we were talking about one or maybe two, but you're saying basically we're really talking about several, into the hundreds possibly, in order to provide the energy that they're suggesting that this would provide for the region, but also to get it to the place where it could even be competitive against some of the other forms of electric generation.
Let me add this. The head of the Tennessee Valley Authority, which does not have the best track record with nuclear anyway, he has said, I don't want one SMR, I want at least 20. And they have already got their little schematic showing one on the Clinch River, which by the way, we're the headwaters of the Clinch River here in Southwest Virginia, but it flows into, we have 3 rivers that flow into the Tennessee Valley Authority, and which during the Depression and under the FDR administration was revitalization. Well, it was vitalization for the mountains here in the cold. So yes, that TVA has already got their claws into this as well.
So tell me, let's shift a little bit and talk a little bit about what the community response has been. So we know that some of the, the producers of energy are gung-ho. How about people who live in Southwest and who will bear the cost in many ways that other parts of the state may not necessarily have to bear?
I think the thing for me that was so shocking when all this news started coming out, and as we continued to try to get information in front of people and find out more, is, and this is a through line, is how little community input there had been and how little information community members were even able to get their hands on. Everything is coming down from the top, and there has been absolutely no effort to loop in or bring in the voices of the people on the ground who would be, the folks who are having to bear the burden. And so I think that the community response so far has been, we don't know anything. TCC, SAMS, the Alliance, the people who are working together to get this information out, y'all are the first people that we have heard anything about this from. And so that has been frustrating, disappointing, not surprising, kind of even I would go as far to say affirming into why we are doing this work and going about it the way that we are going about it.
Yeah, when the governor came here October the 4th of last year, he actually came unannounced. The reporters were told to meet at a site. They would be bused to an undisclosed site.
They were told to meet in a parking lot.
To meet in a parking lot, to be bused. And the people that are behind the governor as he's making this announcement are by invitation only. And most of them were politicians. Okay. And everything we learn is from press releases or media. Okay. Now, how have we responded from the very beginning? And by the way, we have 5 organizations, grassroots. The Alliance for Appalachia is multi-state, and we're all working together. So what have we done? We have done our own press releases. We've been able to get some op-eds. We've done letters to the editor. We have a petition online that we're also collecting door to door. We're getting close to 1,000 signatures on our petition. And all it's calling for is accountability. We're saying, we don't know what's going on. We then had a town hall a couple of weeks ago. We had our own town hall because they have had no public meetings. It was extremely successful. And we have a whole, it's what I'm calling phase 2 of we call it our SMR campaign, that moving forward, we're going to be communicating directly to the governor, to all our new legislators, our senators, congressmen, and we got another announcement this past week about 65,000 acres here that they're going to turn over for energy. They talk about in the broad sense, energy, not just SMRs, but energy development. And so we're getting ready to call out the Virginia Department of Energy. By the way, it's headquartered here in Big Stone Gap. I don't know if y'all know this. They have offices in Richmond, but it's headquartered here. And we're going to call them out for a public meeting. And we're going to call out loud and clear. So we have not, but when we talk to people, they go, I don't know anything about this. What are you talking about? I need to know more. And that, we're not nuclear scientists, but neither is Governor Youngkin and the rest of them. Do I sound a little angry?
No, you don't sound angry. You sound determined. And rightfully so. You need to know what's going to be, what's being planned for your backyard. So to begin to kind of move our conversation towards an end, tell us a little bit where your values, where the morals, where the faith of the community comes into this conversation. Oftentimes we talk about these issues and we only hear, from the perspective of technology or science, but the reason why your organizations exist and the reason why you seem so passionate and determined comes from somewhere. Tell us a little bit about why.
I mean, I am a cornbread fed, Central Appalachian. I grew up right over the hill in far southeastern Kentucky. We're right at the apex here, like 30 minutes from Kentucky, 30 minutes from Tennessee. So like we're sited real close to one another. And I grew up in a coal camp. I come from a coal mining family, right? And so I feel very passionately about our place and also about the responsibilities we have to one another to not only care for the ecology of place, but to also care for one another in community. So I think that's all I'll say about that. It's been a journey, but I feel really happy to be where I'm at, to be doing the work that I'm doing, and to be holding the conversations I get to hold with my friends, kin, neighbors, and community.
I'm a native West Virginia. And I tell people you were raised in a coal camp. I was born and raised in a big coal camp. My grandmother ran the boarding house. Both of my grandfathers. So anyway, there are 5 generations in our family, even to this day, that have been in coal mining. So I'll say that first. I've always been an outdoor person. I love the outdoors and the environment. I've lived from Rhode Island to Utah. I've come back home because Southwest Virginia is just like West Virginia in terms of the culture, the geography, and everything like that. This is our home. This is our place. And we do recognize that it was first the place of the indigenous people. But over the centuries, of course, it's become our home as well.
I also want to say that like the challenges and the fights that we have to fight here mirror the challenges and the fights that folks in other places, those sacrificial zones, regions that suffer from resource curses, that they are also having to fight. What we are doing here mimics and is connected to what is going on in so many other places. So it's important, and we're all connected to each other in that way. Not to be woo-woo, but it's true.
No, it is true, and I appreciate that because whatever happens, and people need to be thinking about it on the larger, in a larger sense that whatever, you can't pollute air in one place and it not impact the rest of us, right? And you can't pollute waters, particularly headwaters of rivers, and it not impact everyone downstream. And so oftentimes we hear great plans and proposals for energy infrastructure that doesn't seem to take those two factors seriously. And I've even heard people say things that clearly they don't understand how currents work or how water currents work, because you can't, we all are impacted by this and we all should care about it. And particularly because we're in the context of climate change, and we know that we keep continually hearing from the scientists that we have maybe 7 years, a very, very short window to address these issues. And when you think about building nuclear, as the response to that, we know that it takes decades sometimes to build nuclear facilities, and we have the time for that when there are other options that are cheaper, much more accessible, and can be employed almost immediately, like solar and wind. And so I'm really grateful for the time that you have given to us today to tell us a little bit about what's going on in Southwest. We definitely will revisit this conversation with you as you continue to collect those signatures, and as the issue continues to develop. Thank you, Jess, and thank you, Sharon. Before we sign off, though, I'd like to give you a moment to say any kind of final salutations, or if there are some town halls or events or anything coming up that you'd like to share.
Well, like I said, we are still trying to raise awareness of our population. That's everything from canvassing door to door. We have one business owner who, our brochure, let's see, here we go. Our brochure we put out, she gives one to every customer. She's collecting signatures. We're going to continue our awareness campaign, but now we're going to more directly reach out to, a nice word, like I say, the powers that be, and we're going to call them out more, because even in the newspapers, like if we do a press release and the reporter calls one of the enablers and said, well, because what we've said is we're not involved, we don't know anything, they'll say, there's time. The woman who is head of the large statewide nuclear consortium did an opinion piece and called us out that we were being impatient, that of course they want to hear from us, but it's not time yet. Maybe later we'll get y'all involved. So we're, and I want to say this is really bringing the community together. Mm-hmm. It's not a partisan issue, is what we tell people. Mm-hmm. Democrats and Republicans are pushing nuclear, unfortunately.
Yeah, Sharon, I'm really glad that you mentioned that there at the end, because that's what I was thinking about as well. I think that we are, even in a broader sense of the national political stage, we're at a flashpoint, and there are a lot of things happening, and there's a lot of divisiveness. But at the end of the day, Bell Hooks, who is a famous and very prolific Black Appalachian writer, said, we have the earth to bind us. So we can tease that out and parse that out amongst ourselves however we want, but we have the earth to bind us. And that is my due north.
One of my favorite authors and speakers and thinkers, Bell Hooks, and she's a Kentuckian and an Appalachian.
Yes, she is.
Yes. So as we sign off, I want to remind all of our everyone who is on our live stream today that you can join our newsletter list and on the screen here, join us at VAIPL. That's our bit.ly link. You must use all caps for that part of it, but we hope that you will sign on to our newsletter and get information as we continue to have these kinds of really important conversations. We also are in the ending up and winding down our climate in the pulpits on the BEMA and in the Minbar, which is a focus for faith leaders to actually teach, preach, or develop some kind of event or action related to climate for their congregations throughout the fall. So we do this every year, and we really encourage faith leaders to teach and or preach, but to engage their congregations on the issue, because the reality is we need everyone's voices to be part of this conversation. We need everyone to participate. And just as you said, it helps build community when we recognize that we have this beautiful earth to care for together that keeps us alive, and we have a responsibility to cultivate and keep it healthy as well. So thank you again, Jess and Sharon. And we're signing off now, but we look forward to hearing from you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.